friends. Today we'll talk about a couple of things regarding your finances immediately after the divorce. This is not a financial planning talk. I recommend that you do a solid long-range financial planning with a good financial advisor in 6-12 months when you have settled down a little bit more with your life. But for today, we are focusing on the few things that need to be taken care of quickly. I will give you a list of what you need to do, and I will not be able to get all the details of how to do them, but I will have some links for you to read and follow up later. So before we get to the to-do list, first, I want to say that I know that how much we all want to put our lives together quickly. But my friend, it takes time and it is a process. So please be patient and kind with yourself and try to minimize the unneeded changes if you can. So keep some parts of your life, such as your job or where the kids go to school, stable for the time being. And some people choose to move to be closer to family or because the old house is not available. That's okay. And having family around to help is great. But the idea is try to minimize changes that will add to your stress. And if you're one of the lucky people who don't have to worry about money and you have a good financial advisor, a good lawyer to help you, that's awesome. I'm happy for you, and you can skip this video mostly and check this off your list. But for the rest of us, managing finances is never easy. And during this period immediately after the divorce, you are still in the aftermath of the divorce and probably still feeling anxious and fearful about the future. And the money questions may be on top of your mind. So there are some financial questions like college planning, retirement planning that can wait till later. But there are a couple questions that you probably want to address quickly. Number one, if God forbid, and if you lose your job or get sick or injured, how will your family be taken care of financially? Number two, the question of, do you have enough income to support yourself and your family right now? And I hope nothing bad happens to you, my friend. But I also know from personal experience how important planning for these two questions are. I remember right after divorce, I was feeling so alone and scared. And these were my biggest worries. I wasn't too worried about myself, afraid of what happened to me. But I wanted to ensure, no matter what happens, that my kids were provided for and my family were taken care of. So having the answers for these two questions gave me a lot of peace and helped me to move forward with less anxiety. So the question number one, if something happens to me on my job, how do I provide for my family? And hopefully you actually had discussed about this with your ex during the divorce process. And it says, in case anything happens to you, they would step up and take care of the kids. But for today's purpose, we will not make any assumptions and focus only on what you can do to protect your family financially. So step one, update the beneficiary information for all your financial accounts. That includes bank accounts, investment accounts, 401ks, IRAs. And if kids are old enough and you trust them, you can also add them to their accounts so they have signature rights. This is super simple to do, and you can do most of them online at home. And this will allow that they will have access to your money if needed. Step two, once you have done the beneficiary, and if you don't have a living trust or will, you must take some time to make one. And if you have one from before, this is a good time to update them. So without the living trust and the will, in case of death, the kids will have to wait 1 or 2 years probation before they can access your assets, and not to mention of all the stress and complications with court hearings, legal fees, possibility of other people interfering or challenge of who should get the asset. And many people procrastinate making a will or a living trust, and it sounds complicated or just don't want to deal with it. But first, it does not have to be complicated, and it doesn't even have to be perfect. You just need to cover the big items and just be good enough. You can always come back and adjust it later. So here are a couple steps to cover the big items, right? So the first one is, for both living trust and will, identify 1 or 2 people as your trustee. Trustee is someone who will execute your trust or will, and they don't have to be a family member. They just need to be someone you trust. And secondly, just make a list of all your main assets, like properties, bank accounts, investment, etc. Right? So, from the divorce process, you probably have a lot of that listed already, so it shouldn't be too hard to do that. And today, I would not be able to get to the details of living trust versus will. And my recommendation is that you should have both. Also, as a general rule of thumb, you should list all your assets in the will, but put most things in the living trust. So most things means almost everything except for retirement accounts. And I don't have time to go into why. That's just a rule of thumb that you definitely should check with your local financial advisor or lawyers. So for the retirement accounts and 401k, if they're not in the living trust, it's really critical to make sure you add the names as beneficiaries. What I'm doing for myself right now is 2021 and I am living in California. So the rules may change and may be different from where you are or the time may have changed. So I'm going to give you this link that there are some basics about will and living trust. You can read about them. So once you have made the list, the next one is find a local lawyer or an online law firm who specializes in preparing will and trust. And you can, it would be good, ask your friends around for a good reference. If your assets are not too complicated, you can totally do it online. Actually, I did that. But do check on the reputation of that firm because it contains a lot of your personal information. And if your assets are complex or if you have complex family structures, I would recommend you actually hire a lawyer, a local lawyer to help you. So the typical fee of a lawyer to prepare a document of a living trust or will is about $1,000 to $2,000 here in California. Again, every place is different. And I have also a very good note that I found from a California Attorney General on some tips of how to do this, and I'll send that link down there as well. So once you have a living trust and a will taken care of, step 3 is purchasing a termed life insurance, and I'm emphasizing termed. The termed life insurance is very inexpensive. You can buy it anywhere, like a AAA or any life insurance company. But be careful. Don't unintentionally buy the whole life insurance unless you have money to spare. So whole life insurance is very different than the termed life insurance. They are very expensive. It is a long-range commitment and usually will lock you in for at least 10 years. So it's used by some people as like an investment more than a typical insurance for life emergencies, which is what we're talking about today. But if you want to, you may look at this in the future when you are doing your long-range financial planning. Step 4, buy some or buy some more accident protection and job loss insurance. And so this is a super good source of the income protection. And if you are a full-time employee, most companies have this as part of the benefits package. And usually it's very inexpensive. Since your marriage status just changed, you don't have to wait until the yearly benefit enrollment period. You can update your benefit election right now and get more coverage. So another related, but actually not a financial item, since we're talking about preparing for the worst, is called health directive. This is for you to specify what actions should be taken, who has access to your medical files, can make medical decisions for you in case you are unable to. And that's very, very important to put that in place. And every state may have a different rules and details, but I want to give you a general idea what it is, what kind of questions that health directive involves. So I'm sending you this link here. It's an example of a California health directive. So do take a look and find one locally and put one in place for yourself. And the second question is, do I have enough money to provide for myself and my family? And if you don't have one, right now would be a great time to make a budget. It gives you the visibility and a sense of control and actions you can take for your financial well-being. A budget is essentially a list of income and outcome expenses for the month. And you want to make sure the income is bigger than your spending. And you can use a very simple Excel to do it. After you look at your credit cards and your checking account, you will know what are the general expenses are. And there are some good worksheets online, and I have included one here down there. So it's a good budget worksheet as a guidelines, how to make a good budget. And I also want to flash some examples here so you can get an idea, and I hope you find them useful. So take a look at this. This is generally just a piece of like the income, right? What's my paycheck and other incomes? That's what's coming. And then you list all the expenses like housing, right? Rent, mortgage, insurance, utility, all that good stuff, food, transportation, cars, and all that. And then health and personal, family, and then finance and other costs. So you add them up, that is all your overall expense. And so that's just an example of the forms, and you can download. And if you have never done one and feel intimidated about doing this yourself for the first time, totally easy to grab a friend who is more financially savvy than you and have them help you set this up. Remember, none of this is permanent, and they don't have to be perfect, right? It's just something you need to start, set up something quickly, capture the majority of your income and expenses. You'll miss a couple little things. It's okay, edit them later. But you just need to be good enough to get started while you are getting your life back. And you should later come back and to update it the more you know about your expenses. And that said, I want to talk a little bit more about budgeting. With divorce, some of us will have half of the income that we used to have, but our expenses may not be half as before. And if money is tight, you will need to figure out what expenses are essentials and what can be cut. It's not pleasant to prioritize and cut expenses, but remember, this is temporary. It's not permanent. And I have found from talking to many people who went through this, typically after 6 to 12 months, you will find a way and you'll get to a much better financial state. Don't worry about it. Another thing, I know as a parent, we already worry about how the kids are impacted emotionally by the divorce. And now, when we have to cut our budget, we worry how the kids will take this tighter budget and a simpler life. And just like us, the kids are feeling anxious and don't know about the new life. But you know what? They are very resilient. And if the kids are old enough, this actually would be a great idea to engage them in the budget planning process together and discuss with them what are the essentials, what can be cut, and what are the areas that you guys want to plan for enjoyment if money is available. And this activity will actually make them feel they have some control over their lives. And they are also helping you and contributing to the family. This will help ease their anxiety, and it will also bring the kids and the family and you all together. So when I was going through divorce right after, it was a very difficult period for us financially. I also just became a committed Christian, and I was learning what it meant to give control to God. So the Bible teaches where your heart is where your treasure is. And we are asked to tithe, meaning giving 10% of our income to God, so we don't hold on too tightly to our money. Not that God needs our money, but it's for us. And that was a very famous Bible verse on money, is like this: bring all the tithes into the storehouse, so there may be food in my house, means a church, God's temple. And test me in this, says the Lord, and see if I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you a blessing, that there will be not enough room for you to receive it. And this is a challenge for us Christians. And interestingly, this is the only place in the whole Bible God says, test me. So when I was making the budget with my new faith, I had a family meeting with my kids, and we decided we need to put our money where our faith was. And tithing was non-negotiable, even though money was super tight. So we reduced all our discretionary expenses like nice to have clothes, eating out, movies, etc. to a minimal. We stopped most of the extracurricular lessons my kids were taking. And my daughter at that time just started her senior year in a private high school. So I was considering pulling her out and sending her to a public school since I could not afford the tuition. So her teacher heard about it and told us to ask for a relief from school. I went, and my request was turned down. A girl in my daughter's cross-country team told her mom about this, and this mom, who is a total stranger, went to the school, somehow convinced them to waive the tuition for my daughter for the rest of the year. It's just amazing. And a few months later, my daughter was admitted by several top universities. I was super happy for her and for us, but I was also very anxious about the tuition. The college tuitions are so expensive. So in February, as we get closer to the decision time of which college my daughter should go, her favorite program in the university she loves gave her a full merit-based scholarship. It was just amazing what happened. And over the past few years, I have seen God's mercy and faithfulness to us again and again as we stay faithful to Him. Now we have taken care of these two burning questions. I want to briefly touch upon a couple things you will do later, just to give you an idea what's ahead. So in about 6 to 12 months after the divorce, it would be a good time to take care of these two other things. The number one is revisit the budget and hopefully be able to put some of those non-essentials you cut earlier back to your budget. And you can plan for some fun activities and maybe even a much needed vacation. So that is very important. Number two, and then this is a good time to start doing a very comprehensive long-range financial planning, and that usually includes saving for an emergency fund, about 6 to 12 months of your living expense. Start paying off debts if you have any. Saving for retirements and kids' college education. And investment strategies. So there are many good financial advisors that can help you. There are also many good books and websites. So one of my personal favorite is the 7 Baby Steps by Dave Ramsey. And you can check them out, but also get reference from your friends. As we are getting close to finish this session, I want to give you a couple of, word of cautions. So when you are still settling down, financially, emotionally, everything, I would recommend you don't purchase anything that requires your long-term commitment. You may ask, what should be considered as a long-term commitment? So my rule of thumb is, if it's something I can not pay with cash or pay off the whole credit card balance at the end of the month, that's a long-term commitment. So the examples are buying a house, a car, a whole life insurance, as we mentioned earlier. Those are all long-term commitments. And then next is also be very careful. Don't let anyone talk you into buying stuff you don't need. You're still recovering from a traumatic experience and can be very vulnerable. You may normally have very good judgment, but this period of time, the trauma throws us off mentally and emotionally. I know I was. So if you can, wait at least a year to make any major purchase decisions. But then, by then, hopefully, you will have better assessment of your new life and also in a much better mental state to make those big decisions. And you have just finished one of the most difficult chapters in your life. And you had made a very courageous decision to move forward. And the vagueness and the unknown typically give us anxiety and stress. But the actions you've taken today for the 2 urgent questions, and also have a date for the longer range planning you need to do, both of this should have helped you feel more at peace. While the road ahead still seems very uncertain and scary, my friend, it will get better. I promise it will get better. It does take time to find your way in the new life. And please, please practice self-compassion. Be very patient and be extra kind to yourself. My dear friend, you may not feel it, but you are brave, resilient, and strong. You are already on your way to build a new and better life for you and your family. I am uber proud of you, and I am here rooting for you.